The Strait of Hormuz is closed, according to a statement from Iran's Revolutionary Guards.
Even though Iran doesn't have jurisdiction over the strait, it has long threatened to use force to shut it down. The Strait of Hormuz is the choke point leading into and out of the Persian Gulf.
3,200 ships stranded at sea, going nowhere. 20 million barrels of oil every single day. Stopped cold.
Could a single mine take out an oil tanker with a hull worth hundreds of millions of dollars and cargo worth hundreds of millions of dollars?
That is what happened when Iran effectively shut down traffic through a waterway just 21 miles wide. One country, one narrow passage. And the entire global economy held its breath. But here is what Tehran did not see coming. While Iran was celebrating its grip over the Strait of Hormuz, something else was already being drawn up. Something Iran cannot mine, cannot missile, cannot threaten in any way. A $200 billion canal carved straight through a mountain range. A permanent bypass that makes everything Iran spent decades building its entire naval power around dramatically less relevant. And this is not a distant dream. Parts of it are already working right now. The Strait of Hormuz made Iran powerful. What you are about to see is exactly how that power is being taken apart, piece by piece. And America is backing every single step of it. To understand why this changes everything, you need to understand what the Strait of Hormuz actually represents. 21 miles wide at its narrowest point. Just 21 miles. And through those 21 miles flows 1/5 of all the oil traded on this planet every single day. The energy that powers factories in Japan, lights cities across Europe, and fuels economies from India to South Korea, all of it moves through one single corridor that Iran sits directly beside. For decades, Tehran understood exactly what that meant. They built their entire military doctrine around one idea: disrupt the strait, and you hold the world hostage. 5,000 sea mines stockpiled. Fast attack boats hidden along the coastline. Coastal missile batteries positioned to strike any vessel entering the corridor. GPS jamming systems ready to blind navigation entirely. Iran did not build a navy to fight America. They built a navy to make the Strait of Hormuz too dangerous for anyone to use. And here is the problem no one talks about. It worked. For a long time, it worked. The mere threat of disruption was enough to shape diplomatic negotiation, soften international pressure, and give Tehran a card it played in every major confrontation for decades. Think about what that means. Iran never needed to fire a single missile, never needed to deploy a single mine. The threat alone was enough to force the world's most powerful governments to negotiate on Tehran's terms. That is an extraordinary amount of leverage built on a geography 21 miles wide. Then in 2026, Iran moved beyond threats. Traffic through the strait was effectively disrupted. 3,200 ships sat waiting at sea. Asia's energy imports froze. Oil climbed past $100 per barrel within days. Global supply chains felt the shock almost immediately. But the moment Iran actually played that card, something shifted permanently. The Gulf states stopped treating the Strait of Hormuz as a vulnerability to manage. They started treating it as a problem to eliminate forever. And this is where everything changes. America backed them, fully. And what they are now building together is something Iran has absolutely no answer for. Look at the geography carefully, and something immediately stands out. The Musandam Peninsula, a small finger of land at the northern tip of Oman, pushes directly up toward the Strait of Hormuz. And the distance between the Persian Gulf side of that peninsula and the Gulf of Oman on the other side is surprisingly short. Just 20 to 50 kilometers of land separating two open bodies of water. What if you cut straight through it? That is the Musandam Canal. A direct channel carved through the Fujairah mountain range, connecting the Persian Gulf to the Gulf of Oman without touching a single meter of Iranian territorial waters. Tankers leaving the Persian Gulf would sail straight out to open ocean. Iran's mines would have no ships to target. Iran's fast boats would patrol empty water. Iran's coastal missiles would point at nothing. Every weapon system Iran built to control the Strait of Hormuz becomes strategically redundant overnight. But here is where it gets serious. The Fujairah Mountains are not sand dunes. They rise to 2,000 meters. The rock is some of the hardest on Earth, the kind that takes years to cut through even with the most advanced equipment available. For modern supertankers, some over 300 to 100 meters long, a channel at least 25 meters deep and 300 to 100 meters wide must be carved out of that rock. The Panama Canal expansion cost $5 billion. Engineers estimate Musandam requires 40 to 60 times that effort. The realistic price tag sits between $200 billion and $300 billion, and here is the part that surprises everyone. The Gulf states are seriously considering paying it, because when you calculate the true cost of allowing Iran to hold your economy hostage indefinitely year after year, negotiation after negotiation, $300 billion starts to look like the most rational investment a nation could ever make. This is not emotion, this is math, and the math is starting to win the argument. But none of this matters if it cannot actually be built. So engineers have been examining a second option, one that goes in a completely different direction. The empty quarter route runs 950 kilometers through the Rub al-Khali Desert of Saudi Arabia. Start at the southern Saudi coastline. Cross the largest continuous sand desert on Earth. Reach the Gulf of Oman on the other side. No mountains, no 2,000-meter peaks to blast through. Flat terrain for most of the route. A 2008 Saudi-backed feasibility study put the cost at $200 billion, lower than Musandam, and across ground that offers far fewer geological surprises underground. But this route comes with a problem no one can ignore. 950 kilometers is a different kind of challenge entirely. Water evaporation in one of the hottest environments on the planet creates serious operational problems year-round. Sand gradually fills the canal without constant and expensive maintenance. And the route runs dangerously close to the Yemen border, a security risk that no Gulf state takes lightly after everything that region has already been through. Two routes, two massive price tags, two completely different engineering challenges. But the same strategic destination, a world where Iranian disruption of the Strait of Hormuz no longer holds the global economy at risk. And here is the part that no one expected. Both options are being studied simultaneously. Because the Gulf states have decided they are not choosing between these routes, they are deciding which one gets built first. That is how serious this has become. Here is what most coverage misses entirely. The canal is a long-term project, but the bypass is already partially operational today. And this is where the real story is. When President Trump issued a 48-hour ultimatum on March 26 to keep the Strait of Hormuz open, the Gulf states did not wait for the clock to run out. Before the ultimatum even expired, Saudi Arabia and the UAE had already activated infrastructure quietly built over decades specifically for this moment. The port of Khor Fakkan sits on the UAE's eastern coastline. It opens directly onto the Gulf of Oman. No Strait of Hormuz, no Iranian territorial waters, no threat of any kind. It is a natural deep-water port surrounded by the Hajar Cliffs, fully capable of handling the largest tankers in the world. Getting it to full operational capacity required between $200 million and $500 million, a fraction of the canal cost. And it is moving oil right now. The UAE's Habshan to Fujairah pipeline connects interior oil fields directly to the port of Fujairah on the Gulf of Oman coast, running at full capacity today. Completely outside Iranian reach, Saudi Arabia's Petroline, a 1,200-kilometer pipeline running from the Abqaiq facilities all the way to the port of Yanbu on the Red Sea, now carries up to 7 million barrels every single day. 7 million barrels Iran cannot touch, cannot disrupt, and cannot threaten in any way. But here is the part that changes the entire equation. These bypass ports are no longer just moving Saudi and UAE oil. Iraq, Kuwait, and Qatar, nations with no bypass infrastructure of their own, are now routing their exports through UAE territory. Iraqi oil moving overland through Kuwait to UAE ports. Kuwaiti crude via short pipeline connections. Qatari condensate transferred directly into the UAE network. What started as individual country emergency solutions is becoming a unified Gulf energy network. and every single nation that connects to this network is permanently removed from the list of countries Iran can threaten. If Fujairah is targeted, Khor Fakkan operates. If Khor Fakkan is disrupted, Yanbu carries the load. Iran cannot shut this down by striking a single point. The redundancy is not accidental. It was designed exactly this way. Every new pipeline connection that comes online reduces Iran's leverage further, not gradually, mathematically. And the connections are coming online faster now than at any point in the last 30 years. Here is the strategic reality Tehran is now confronting. Iran spent decades and tens of billions of dollars building one specific military capability: the ability to make the Strait of Hormuz too dangerous to use. 5,000 sea mines designed for shallow, narrow waters. Fast attack boat fleets built for confined coastal corridors. Coastal missile batteries positioned along a predictable 21-mile channel. Every single one of those systems was built around one assumption: that the ships would have to come through the strait. When the ships stop coming through the strait, Iran's strategic position changes dramatically. Those mines cannot be redeployed into open ocean. Those fast boats are not built for deep water operations. Those missile batteries were positioned for a corridor that is steadily losing traffic and strategic importance. If this bypass network fully activates, Iran could lose control over nearly half of its strategic leverage in the entire region, not because America defeated it in open battle. Because America and the Gulf states engineered a geography where that leverage simply has fewer and fewer targets left to threaten. That is not just a military outcome. That is something far more permanent. You cannot negotiate your way back from irrelevance. Meanwhile, the United States military is already working the problem from both directions. American aircraft and naval assets are actively monitoring and countering coastal systems along the Hormuz corridor. Mine-clearing vessels from the 22-nation coalition are working through the strait systematically, meter by meter. The bypass is the insurance policy. The military is the immediate solution. The canal is the permanent answer, and Iran is running out of responses to all three simultaneously. Here is what often gets overlooked in all of this. For decades, the United States Navy has maintained a constant and expensive presence in the Persian Gulf, specifically to keep the Strait of Hormuz open. Carrier strike groups, patrol vessels, mine-sweeping assets. Billions of dollars every single year to guard a 21-mile stretch of water against a threat Iran built specifically to exploit. Every American taxpayer has been funding that mission for 30 years. The moment a functional bypass network makes the Strait of Hormuz strategically less critical, the United States Navy gets something back that no diplomatic agreement could ever deliver: flexibility. The freedom to redeploy those assets, to redirect that budget, to focus American naval power where the actual long-term strategic challenges are. What often gets overlooked is this: America did not just respond to the Hormuz crisis militarily. America backed an engineering solution that makes this kind of crisis structurally impossible to repeat. That is a completely different category of strategic thinking, and it is exactly the kind of thinking that has kept America ahead for the last century. Our men and women in uniform are clearing the strait right now. American backing made the pipeline activations possible. American pressure accelerated the bypass infrastructure already running today, and when that $200 billion canal is finally carved through those mountains, Iran will still be sitting next to the Strait of Hormuz, watching ships sail somewhere else. The Suez Canal changed the world in 1869. The Panama Canal changed it again in 1914. The $200 billion canal being planned through the Hajar Mountains may be the next entry on that list. But this time, it is not just about moving ships faster or cutting travel time. It is about permanently removing a weapon from the hands of a regime that used the threat of disruption as its greatest source of power for 40 years. For 40 years, the world adjusted around the Strait of Hormuz. For the first time, the Strait of Hormuz is being forced to adjust around the world. Iran built its leverage on a choke point. America and its allies are engineering that choke point into irrelevance. Did Iran just make the biggest strategic miscalculation in the modern history of the Middle East? Or is there still a move left that nobody sees coming? Drop your answer below. I read every single comment. If you want daily coverage that does not sugarcoat what is actually happening, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. I post every single day, and I am not stopping.